Well, y'all, Mother's Day is always a difficult day if you're a pastor, to be quite honest with you, because for some, Mother's Day is not a great day. And I want to know that I'm aware that some of you, it's difficult. Some people never have had children, they've wanted to have children, or perhaps maybe you're here and your mom has recently passed away, and so this is painful for you. Or some people look at their life and they say, you know what, I wasn't a very good mom, and I've kind of missed my chance with my kids. I like the Maya Angelou quote, which I hope you can embrace. Maya Angelou said this: I did the best I knew how to do, and when I knew better, I did better. Some of you maybe didn't know how to be a good mom when you had your kids, and so that makes Mother's Day kind of tough. And then some have lost a child. And I know Mother's Day, for you, regardless of your age, Mother's Day is tough. So I just want you to know that I'm aware of that, but also know there's some people celebrating today. You're a mom, and this is a very happy, special day. I've had the privilege of being around some excellent moms in my day. My mother, who was with my sister in California today. My sister's so happy because she's lived in California for about 20 years, and this is the first Mother's Day my mom has actually been out there on Mother's Day for her to celebrate with her. But my mom was an excellent, excellent mom. Many of you know my mom. My sister is a great mom. She has 3 daughters. The mother of my sons is a wonderful, wonderful mom, one of the best I have ever seen. Of course, I married a woman who is a great, great mom. And her mom, my mother-in-law, is a wonderful, wonderful mom. So I've been surrounded by wonderful moms. Plus, so many of you are wonderful moms. I just am kind of amazed when I watch the way you interact with your children and the way you have raised your kids and the way they honor you. Pat, I think about Joey and how he loves you and honors you, and I just know that we have some wonderful moms here, and so that's terrific. I'm really honored to be here. I know you guys. I'm really blown away by parents of toddlers. We have 6 grandkids, and they're just so active. They're just like, they run everywhere. And I don't know how you do what you do. I'm just kind of blown away by that. I saw this quote by Milton Berle. I thought it was very, very true. He said, if evolution really worked, mothers would have more than 2 hands. And I think that's probably true. If evolution really worked, moms would have 4 hands coming at me. Anyway, what I want to do is talk to you today about a lesson that I really think is for everybody. And yet moms, I think, can certainly apply it. I think dads can apply it, but I think it's going to have application for everybody. I have seen parents my whole life who would focus on one particular thing they wanted to instill in their children at the exclusion of more important things. You know what I'm talking about? I knew a parent once who was so concerned about her children having good manners. I mean, they had impeccable manners, but that's all they had. There was nothing else. There was nothing else. There was no relationship with other people. There was no heart hadn't been developed the way it should have been developed, but boy, they had manners. They knew how to do that. I have known parents who were controllers. They wanted their children to live a certain way. They'd beat their kids down. I've known parents who wanted their young boy or young girl to grow up in their image, the parents' image. And they missed out on what I think was the most important lessons maybe we can instill to our kids. So before I get into the meat of the message, I just want to say, just to get this out of the way, I want to say that I believe the most important thing a parent can give their children is a good picture of God. I think that is critical. If you can give your kids a good picture of God, I think it's an amazing thing when I see young children grow up seeing a mom and dad who have a genuine, heartfelt, positive relationship with God. But beyond that, I think there are some lessons that maybe we forget that are the most important lessons we need to build into our children. And that's what I want to share with you today. So if you're a young parent, I hope you'll write this down, at least think about it, at least converse about these things. If you've already raised your kids, I hope you'll maybe think about, are these qualities that I embrace? Are these qualities that are part of my life? And then maybe, if you're a grandparent or you have influence over someone, maybe you can help build these attributes into them, because I think they're that important. Much of what I'm going to talk about today was first raised in me from a writer by the name of John Izzo. John wrote a wonderful book called The 5 Secrets You Must Discover Before You Die. John has a PhD in organizational communication. He is a former pastor. He's now an award-winning author. He's a corporate cultural crusader. But in his book, he surveyed 15,000 people, actually to get a number down to 200 people that were considered wise. These wise individuals aged from 60 to 105, but there were 200 of them that pretty much everybody said, these are wise people. And so he interviewed these wise people to say, what were the most important lessons in life that helped you live to the age you are with the success that you've had and seeming to handle life the way you handle it? These were not necessarily wealthy people. These were people from all different stratas of life, but you looked at them and you said, that is a wise person. That is a wise person. And he asked them questions. And his conclusions did not surprise me. In fact, when I read the book, I said, this is amazing because these are principles that I know I have seen in God's Word. You see, truth is truth. It doesn't matter where you find it. Truth is truth. What Izzo discovered is the same thing that Christ had said 2,000 years ago, just in a little different way. So with your pen in hand, I want to give you 5 things that are secrets most people never understand, that I believe are the most important things you can grasp or then pass on to your children. These are big. And so write this down. In life, the first thing I think you must pass on to your kids and teach them this, and you must embrace it yourself. In life, you need to learn to be true to yourself. In life, you need to learn to be true to yourself. Now, sometimes we get confused in our ideas about what true spirituality is. We think following God means that we become like little robots marching in lockstep as we follow this cosmic deity. But that's a million miles from the truth. You see, the Bible describes God creating each of us unique. God made each of us special. And it's the wise parent who helps a child discover who they are, who they really are. So they don't have to go through life pretending to be something that they are not. It's a wise parent who helps their children discover their gifts, their passions, their aptitudes, and what they need to orchestrate their lives around or organize their lives around. What are the activities they need to organize their lives around? Proverbs 22:6 is misunderstood by most. Look on the screen. Proverbs 22:6 says this: start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. The King James says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Many people think, erroneously, they think if you bring a child to church, then even though they get rebellious in their 20s and they go off on their own path and they maybe get far from God, this is a promise, one day they'll come back to God. That's not what this verse is saying. When this verse says, start children off on the way they should go, that means start them off according to how they were created by God, according to their bent, how they are. And when they are old, they won't depart from that. They'll know that they are on the right path. As adults, we need to ruthlessly evaluate to make sure that we are living according to how we are wired. Many of us in our 20s or 30s or 40s have discovered that we have been living a life that maybe was not in accordance with how God uniquely wired us. And it is a wise person who makes adjustments at the point of discovering that, who makes adjustments to make sure that they live their lives in accordance to how God created them. Socrates said this: the unexamined life is not worth living. And that's true. To go through life and never look and say, how did God wire me? How am I uniquely formed? It's important for us to understand. Now let me give you some questions that might help you get to the bottom of this if you're trying to think through how this all works. I ask myself these questions: am I following my heart, and am I being true to myself? Because y'all, I know how to fake it too. I know how to fake and pretend. So I have to say, am I being true to how God made me? Is my life focused on the things that really matter to me? You know, there are times that I used to pastor in an entirely different environment, and I had to do so many things that were not at all a part of how God wired me. They were not at all in accordance to how God kind of wired me. And I had to say, you know, that's not really the way that I think I'm supposed to live my life. Am I being the person I want to be in the world? Now, if you look in the mirror and you say, you know what, as I look in the mirror, I'm not being who God created me to be. then adjust. And if you're given the gift of raising a child, do everything you can to help that child realize they are precious and special to God, and He has gifted them, and help them discover what those gifts are, and don't force them down a road that maybe they weren't intended. I've seen parents who want their kids to be jocks when their kids weren't jocks. That wasn't how they were wired. I've seen parents who wanted their kids to excel in certain subjects, and maybe the kids weren't wired to excel in those subjects. And so I think it's very, very important. One of the words that's tossed around in church a lot that many people don't know what it means is the word sin. Sin is an Old English archery term, and it means to miss the mark. You know what I think is one of the biggest sins of all? To miss the mark on who you're supposed to be in this life. You miss that mark, and you've missed a pretty big mark. I tried to sell insurance at one season in my life. Nothing wrong with selling insurance, nothing wrong with being a salesman, nothing at all. But you know what I discovered? It wasn't the way God wired me. It wasn't who I was supposed to be. And so I would come home often tired, but it wasn't good tired. You know the difference in good tired and bad tired? Good tired is when you do those things that you're created to do, and you do it with all of your energy and all your might, and at the end of the day you say, oh, I am so tired, but it's a good tired. But then you know what bad tired is? Bad tired is when you spend all day doing things God did not call you to do, did not gift you to do, and you're just spent. At the end of the day, you're just spent. God doesn't want you to do those things, spend your life on those activities, become who He created you to be. Following one's heart requires courage. It requires that we quiet other voices around us that are competing for our attention. But if you are ruthless about it, you will say, I have this one life, and I want to learn to be true to who God made me to be. Number 2, write this down. In life, you must learn to leave no regrets. In life, you must learn to leave no regrets. Harriet Beecher Stowe, you know the name, she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet Beecher Stowe said this, the bitterest tears shed over the graves are for words left unsaid and deeds left undone. Let me say that again. The bitterest tears shed over the graves are for words left unsaid and deeds left undone. I've thought about this a lot this week. I don't think death is what we fear the most. You see, I really believe if we live life fully and we've done all the things we had hoped to do, I think that we can accept death. We kind of accept it. But what we fear the most is not having lived life to the fullest extent. To face our death with regret that we didn't do those things that we were supposed to do in our lives. To face our death with the thought, I wish I had done this, and I didn't. To live with no regrets means that you recognize the brevity of life. Ethan said his friend passed away 28 years old. Life is short. Even if you live to be 100 years old, it's just like that, really? And none of us are promised. We don't know how long we have. That's why James said this. James chapter 4, verse 14 says this, why you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes, just here and then gone. You need to learn with no regret. As we embrace the idea that we must live life with no regrets, it forces us to get off the sofa, doesn't it? How can we sit on the sofa and watch television 24/7 when we have a life to live? You're going to lay in the bed one day and be close to death and think, geez, I missed an episode of Desperate Housewives. I hate that I missed that. That's not going to be high on your list. Izzo said in his book, as people grow older, not one person said they regretted having tried something and failed. He said nobody regrets having tried something and failed. Most people said they had not taken enough risk in life. And because they hadn't taken enough risk in life, that's what they regretted the most. At the Village, over the last several years, we have addressed from time to time the idea of seeing your life as a story. I think if you want to live with no regrets, when you come to a fork in the road, often ask yourself, what is the best story? If my life is a story, what is the best story? And then follow what makes the best story. You're going to be self-centered your whole life? You're going to come to the fork in the road and always say, I want to be selfish. I'm going to do what's selfish. You're going to come to the fork in the road and you're going to be a hero. You're going to make a good decision to do something that is magnanimous, that's going to bless many people. What are you going to do? Live life with no regret. 1996, I had a chance to go to Russia. The church was only 3 years old. I was the only preacher at the time that was a part of the village church 17 years ago, just me. I was scared to death. I was going to be gone for 2 Sundays. I wondered if our church could survive it, honestly, 17 years ago. Could we survive 2 Sundays with me gone? I also had a wedding that I could do, and if I did that wedding, it would be like $200 that I would get. And there was a part of me that really needed $200 and said, geez, do I go to Russia, this opportunity to go to Russia, or do I stay home and just do what I am doing every week? What is the right thing for me to do? And I weighed it out. And I made the decision I was going to go to Russia. And I'll tell you something, it was one of the greatest decisions I ever made. There's no regret. I'm glad that I went. I was scared. I was nervous about going. Experienced some tough things when I was there. But I felt my heart grow. I felt some things happen that I never knew could happen in me. And I found out that the church was okay. I found out I could get by without the little $200 I was going to get for the wedding. I could get by without that. And discovered that it was going to be okay. On my deathbed, I'm sure glad that I went to Russia. And I think I'll look back and think of the friends I met, the journeys that I have been on that came out of that trip. More than I would have said on my deathbed, I'm glad that I stayed here. And just for that little $200 that I was going to get. I've always been blown away at my dad. I don't know how my dad, my dad was real smart. Way different from me as far as his smartness, way different. Mathematician smart. And so when I was 11, actually when I was 9, my dad came home and we had never been I'd gone with him to school. He went to school in New York for a while and we traveled a little bit, but most everybody we knew were in Georgia, and then we'd all go to Florida for vacation. Y'all remember that's the way we did it. Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Florida. And Dad came home, and I was in the 4th grade, and he said, I think we're going to move to Hong Kong for 2 years. Don't tell anybody. Well, I went to school, and I told everybody that we were moving to Hong Kong. I told everybody we're moving to Hong Kong, and then we didn't move. And so I was real embarrassed. So then when I was 11, he said, I think this time it's going to work out. We're going to move to Africa, South Africa. And don't tell anybody. And I didn't tell anybody this time, but sure enough, January of 1973, we moved to Africa. And I just think, what is it about my dad? He was 31 years old, and now Africa doesn't seem so far away maybe, but way back then Africa was pretty far away. But my dad wanted to live with no regret. And so he packed his family up and we went across the ocean and we lived in Africa. And then when we left Africa, instead of us coming straight home, he at great expense figured out how to take us all through Africa and then all through Europe and then brought us back home, all because he wanted us to have no regrets. He wanted us to see everything we could see. And that did something inside of me. So as I became an adult, I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to see the world. I wanted my boys to see the world. I wanted us to, take the opportunity to do everything you can do. This isn't just a young person's deal. This lady right here, my wife's mom, Joyce Shadinger, she is 83 years old and lives a fuller life than anybody that I know. A fuller life. Her schedule would shame all of us. She gets up earlier, she goes to bed later. She's got a cell phone, she texts me the Braves scores, and she'll say it's the 8th inning, the game's tied 6-6. She watches the Braves. She goes from early to late. But you know what? She is living life, no regrets. She is taking every opportunity she can take. She's doing everything she can do. She has a chance to spend the day with her daughter, her grandchildren, her granddaughter, her great-grandchildren. She's there because she wants to live her life with no regrets. It is important when you think about what are you teaching your kids. Teach them to not cough without covering their mouth. Teach them to use the right fork and the right knife. Teach them all of those things. Those are important. But more important, be true to themselves and live life with no regret. You have an opportunity to do something that's noble and good. Go do it. Get in the game. This is your life. Number 3, in life, you must become love. I don't know that parents teach that very well. You must become love. If your child grows up and makes millions of dollars and doesn't have love, he has missed out on what is most important. And his life is not nearly what it could be. Leo Buscaglia says this. He's a great writer. Love is life. And if you miss love, you miss life. And that's true. Love is also a choice. So many times we think that love is a cloud that sits on our shoulder. We think that, well, I feel love about this. I don't know how that happened, but the cloud sat on my shoulder. Or we use love to describe so many things that really are just a good feeling to us. Pizza, we love. The Braves, we love. The new pair of shoes, we love. The big television screen, we love. We love all of those things. But I'm talking about the love that you choose to share with an individual because of your choice, the action that you take. Well, Jesus, did he say anything was important about love? He did. Matthew 22, this is what Jesus said. Someone came to him and said, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Good question, don't you think? All these social issues people are so concerned about, you'd think he would say, well, certainly it's this one, or it's this one, or it's this one. But what does Jesus say? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And then he said this, the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. So he is saying, love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. How this works for me, simple. We choose to love God. As we choose to love God, then we're able to love ourselves. That's hard for some of us. Some of us have a voice in our mind over and over and over that wants to beat us down. We beat into our heads sometimes the idea that God has created us as vile creatures, worthy of hell. That's what we think about. We're vile creatures, worthy of eternal damnation. And because we do that, we think, well, certainly we can't love ourselves. But we can. Do you know that you have 45,000 to 55,000 thoughts that run through your mind every day? Most of those thoughts, some of you are tired. You say, geez, that's why I'm so tired. They're running all the time. Most of those thoughts are benign. They don't really mean much. But then there are many times during the day that thoughts go through your mind like this. I'm a loser. I'm ugly. I'm not lovable. I'm fat. I'm a disappointment. I'm never going to be successful. I'm not a good parent. I'm not a good person. Those thoughts need to be erased from your mind and replaced with other thoughts. God says that you are worthy. God says you're valuable. God says you are precious in his sight. God says that he emptied heaven of its fairest jewel for you. He loves you. He cares for you. Those are the thoughts we need. And as we learn to love ourselves, then we choose to act with love towards our family and our friends, people that we know. And then ultimately, we choose to become love in all of our interactions. We just choose to love. I met a woman a few weeks ago. She was very controlling, very negative, and at first contact, I did not like her. But then I said, I'm going to love her. In my mind, I'm going to love her. And as I said I was going to love her, I began to look at her differently in my heart. And I think something changed in her. I think she began to feel something, a godly love, And I think I began to see her differently. And I think she began to see me differently. This is a great story. Paul was 73 years old. He was a retired businessman and he found out he had cancer. So what did he do? He became a volunteer hospice sitter. Can you imagine being a hospice sitter when you just found out you have cancer? He would spend hours sitting with people in the final stages of terminal illness, helping them to be comfortable as possible during the dying process. Even though he had a potentially terminal illness, he still spent his days comforting those who were dying. He told me about an experience he had when he took a shift sitting with a man he had never met before. As he arrived to take his shift, the sitter whom he was replacing pulled him aside. He told me that the man I was about to sit with had a cancer, and the cancer was now in his face. And he went on to tell me that his face was quite disfigured and to be prepared because I may have a reaction when I saw him. As I entered his room and looked at his face, I looked upon a totally deformed face with raw sores. And at first, I felt the emotion of disgust. Paul remembered that, although he was experiencing feelings of disgust, he had the power to choose to love this man. In that moment, I chose to see him with the eyes of love. And his face changed. And I saw the beauty that was within the man. I could see that his spirit brightened because I believe subconsciously he became aware that I had chosen to love him. Paul realized something that many of the people I had interviewed told me as well. The power to choose to love will transform us. So what are you teaching your children? I want to suggest that we teach our kids to become love in every interaction. Every interaction. Love. Love. And be that yourself. I love that I'm a Southerner. I really do love that I'm a Southerner. So much about being from the South that is fantastic. But there's also something about being down here that we want people to know that we don't take no crap from anybody and we'll kill you. You know what I mean? There's just a certain, and even people that wear the name of Christ, that's kind of their attitude. You know, you take my gun away from me, I'll shoot you. You know, just that kind of a deal. And, you know, fight the Second Amendment deal or do whatever you want to do. But let love be what people know you by. Not the fact that you're a Southerner, you'll shoot somebody if they try. You know, that's how does that honor Jesus? I want people to know that, you know, my innate nature, who I am deep down as a young man growing up, I had a temper and would fight at the drop of a hat. But as Christ has taken more of my heart, that's not me now. I want to love. I want to help. I want to serve. I want to be kind. I don't want to return evil for evil. I want to return good. When someone means evil to me, I want to return good to them. Because Christ is teaching me to love. And I think we teach our kids to love. Number 4. We have to teach our children, we have to embrace this ourselves, to learn to live in the moment. To live the moment. Now what I mean when I say live the moment is to be fully in every moment of our lives. To live fully means to be fully present in every moment. It means that we do not focus on the past or the future, but experience each moment with gratitude and purpose. It means that we recognize that we have the power in each moment to choose contentment and happiness. Let me talk to you just a moment about the return of Christ, because that's a big deal. My whole life, people have said, well, have you read the book of Revelation? What do you think about the return of Jesus? And some people, they look for the return of Jesus and they just study the Bible to find out, well, now this new prime minister's over there in Russia, so because he's over there, it looks to me like this is lining up with the Bible and Jesus is coming back. Y'all know people like that? That's all they want to talk about. Pastor, when are you going to teach about it? Listen, I'm about to tell you everything I know about the return of Christ. Studying the Bible 32 years, everything I know, 4 simple sentences if you want to write this down. One day Jesus will return, the Bible says it. Number 2, nobody knows what that day will be. Nobody knows. Number 3, it might be today. And number 4, we need to live each day fully because we don't know when he's coming back. That's what we need to know. That's why in the Bible, it was clear, people in the Bible, they thought Jesus would return in their lifetime. Why? Jesus wants people to think he's going to return in their lifetime. He wants all of us. He may tarry for another 1,000 years. But he wants every generation to think he might come back today. He really might come back today. I need to live today fully. Great verses in the Bible. John 14:3, if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come back and take you with me, that where I am, you can be also. Acts 1:11, men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into the sky? The same Jesus who's been taken up into heaven will come back in the same way you've seen him go. He's coming back. But nobody knows when. It might be today. Live a life worthy of his return. Live fully. We have no power over the past or the future. We only have power over this present moment. That's a good quote. We have no power over the past or the future. We only have power over this present moment right now. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And I see so many people who can't live in the moment because they're trying to capture the moment with a camera phone. Sometimes you need to stop taking the picture and just Live in the moment and experience the moment. Some people never live life themselves because they're watching other people live life. You need to live life yourself in the moment. Be present in the moment. Fifth and final thing is this. In life, you must give more than you take. We need to teach our kids in life they need to give more than they take. I think parents do a disservice when kids think it's all about gimme, 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 gimme. We messed up. Kids need to certainly, we want to give to them. That's good, but we need to teach them from their earliest days that they are supposed to learn to give, to serve, to help. I've always admired Steve and Kelly Morris because their daughters, two of the finest Christian women I have ever known in my life, their daughters from their earliest days were taught to serve. Every summer they would go take vacation time, and they would go and they would spend it at Royal Family Kids Camp, which was a camp for abused children. And so this whole family, Steve, Kelly, and the daughters would give a week of their vacation to serve these underprivileged, abused children. You don't think that had something to do with the Morris girls growing into fine, outstanding human beings? They learned how to give. They learned it was giving more than taking. Martin Luther King Jr. said this: an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And that is true. If I'm only thinking about my car, my bills, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to live, what house I'm going to live in, what kind of clothes am I going to wear, if that's my whole life, shame on me. There's a world out there that I need to be concerned about. I've done lots of funerals in my day. One of the saddest funerals for me is when I go, and I've done it a few times, and nobody's there. Nobody. And you stand there and you talk to an empty room. You say a few words. And you think, what kind of life did this person live that nobody is there? Well, when someone takes the approach, I'm going to give more than I take in this life, you usually don't have the room to place the people who want to come when they pass to give their regards. Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychotherapist, in his book, Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, describes his days in the concentration camp between 1942 and 1945. It's one of the most profound books you will ever read. One of the most important sections in his book is when he deals with the issue of suicide. Viktor Frankl says that many prisoners wanted to take their life. That makes sense. They had everything stripped from them. They had been deeply violated. They had had their freedoms and their livelihoods taken from them, their homes taken from them, their families taken from them, and ultimately their dignity was taken from them. But Frankl noticed that you could not convince someone to stay alive by telling them they were going to get something from the world. If you're trying to counsel somebody who's thinking about suicide and you say, you know, one day you may win the lottery. You don't want to die. You may win the lottery. Or one day you're going to get to drive a great car. That won't keep someone from taking their life. Frankl said this, though. If you could help a person see that the world expected something of them, that there was some good he could do in his lifetime, often a person would choose life over death. When you look into a dad's eyes and you say, listen, your son is going to need you one day. Your son is going to need you. You're going to need to be here because that son is going to need you, and you are the one responsible to make sure he gets what he's supposed to get. Often, unless there's mental illness, extreme mental illness, often that helps someone. Frankl concluded that people who know what the world expects of them will never throw their lives away. He was saying when people learn that they need to give more than they take, that helps them. Jesus said this in Matthew 10:39, whoever finds their life, they'll lose it. Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. He's saying whoever learns to give their life away, that's the person who will really have life. The person that learns to give their life away, they're the ones that have life. Y'all, Christianity is not about believing rightly. I grew up in a church that thought if you just believed rightly, that's the answer. It's not about believing rightly. It's about a belief that leads you to share your life, to unclench your fist and become a giver, not a taker. to be genuinely concerned about people who are less fortunate than you. This belief that we have makes that happen. The belief is important, but it's only important in that it transforms us. We can be so self-focused. I know I can be so self-focused. We need to learn to cry for the world, not so much for ourselves, but for the world. Here's some questions that maybe will help you. Did I make the world a better place this week? That's a great question to ask yourself. Did I make the world a better place this week? Did I remind myself this week that I'm making a difference even if I don't see it? Say, Ray, do you ask these questions? I ask these questions all the time because I try to examine my life. Because when I check out, I want to know that I live the best life I could live. I've certainly made my share of mistakes, but I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on becoming the man God made me to be. Living every second of life to the fullest. Was I kind? Was I generous? Was I giving at the end of the week? Because I want to be more of a giver than a taker. I want to share more than I take. I want to live well and I want to die well. And that's my highest hope for my sons, for their wives, for my lovely stepdaughter, her family, my grandkids. That's my highest hope, is that we will live well and we will die well. That we will live the most beautiful story we could live. What is that story for you? Is it being having a happy home? Is it learning how to not be so self-centered, but learning how to put others' needs in front of your own? What is it? I want my grandkids to learn to be true to themselves. I want them to learn to leave no regrets. I want them to learn to become love more each day. I want them to learn to live in the moment. And I really want them to learn to give far more than they take. And if they can do that, I'll be very, very happy. Would you bow your heads, please? Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for these thoughts today about what we can focus on in this life. The true spirituality is learning how to live well. Living well. Putting you first in a way that transforms us into new creatures. I pray we'll teach our children well. I pray we will apply these truths to our own heart. I pray that as we are growing older, we will embrace life more. Let us get every moment out of the day we can. Let us be vibrant in our faith, vibrant in our love, vibrant in giving. Let us make a difference. If this church suddenly disappeared, may the people of Tri-Cities, may they say, we miss that church. That church made a difference. May we live the kind of life that others would want to follow because it's good. We thank you for this and we pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.